time to learn from the best of game devs. Tony Chan here, and welcome to episode 87 of Game Dev Loadout, where I chat with inspiring professionals every Wednesday morning to bring you the motivation and tactics for a successful gaming career. Now let's chat with today's feature guest, Jake Birkett. Jake, it is game time. Are you ready?
I am, certainly, yes.
Yes. Jake has been an indie developer since 2005 for his company, Grey Alien Games. His work includes Shadowhand and Regency Solitaire. He also writes blogs about his experience, which I encourage every game developer to do as well. So go ahead, Jake. Give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Okay, thanks for having me on here today, Tony. I started making games in the 1980s. I got a computer called a 48K Spectrum, and it came with a manual. So all game computers in those days used to come with programming manuals. And I learned to make games because games were quite expensive to buy, and so I was sort of fiddling around making games myself. And I did that as a hobby on the Commodore 64, the Amiga, and then sort of the early PCs. But then I spent 9 years making business software, still making games as a hobby. And then finally, when I was 30, I went full-time indie and started making games, as my career, and haven't really looked back. So, yeah, that's how I got started.
What made you decide to make that big jump towards indie?
Okay, well, I was making a game in my spare time called Iron Fist, which was like a kung fu platform game. And I was doing that sort of in the middle of the night because I did a full-time job and then coding at night. And I just got really, really tired from doing that and realized that I wanted to do it full-time because I was enjoying that more than my job. And realized that, I needed to do it full-time to get anywhere, make any decent progress. And so I spoke to my wife about going full-time. And she was very, she was supportive, and I went full time, and as I say, the rest is history. So,
yeah, and I can't imagine like telling your wife that, because it is a big transition and it's a risky move. So, I definitely understand where you come from. So, to this day, what is your current main area of expertise?
Basically, I'm a programmer and game designer. Yeah, so I do the game design myself and I implement it. Also, just running an indie business. I run my own business now for even longer than I've been in indie, because before that I was an IT consultant, stuff like that. So, yeah, because I take it seriously, I do run a business, and so I've got a lot to offer in that area as well.
Oh, yeah. It was indies. We still got a lot to learn in terms of business and how everything operates. But first, I want to kind of talk about the blog you recently wrote about spending too long making a game. And one of the things I tell indie devs, or, just a small team, is to start off making small games and just put it out there, constantly put out games out there. And, you talked about putting more thought into the timeline and the profit from a longer game versus a shorter game. Can you dive deeper into the blog that you wrote about and tell us what is something we probably don't know about in this topic that we should?
Yeah, okay, sure. So even when I started this game I told you about, Iron Fist, earlier on, I started doing that full time, but I suddenly realized it was going to take too long for me to finish, right? And I actually abandoned that project. And then at the time, I'd seen a game called Bejeweled, which was, one of the first match 3s that everybody's heard about. And so I decided to make some smaller games. So even before I sort of cloned Bejeweled, I made sort of like a Tetris game and a few other little small mini games just to practice making a game from the beginning to the end. Because there's a lot of stuff you need to do beyond making the game fun, like all the surrounding UI and everything else, and then putting it online and selling it, and all of that's a sort of whole process. So it's really valuable just to make a bunch of small games and get them out there and see what your strengths and weaknesses are. And that kind of thing, really. And so a lot of my first games were quite small, but ended up actually earning quite good money because I didn't spend too long on them. That was also due to sort of reusing the engine. So I often got my game and I reused the engine. I added some new mechanics and some new features, and some new art as well, of course. And that saved me a lot of time, and so my games made more money. And the longer I've taken on a game, I've always ended up making sort of less money per hour overall. And that was a realization I came to recently after shipping Shadowhand, my longest game, at 2.5 years. And I decided this year to go back to making smaller games that can hopefully be more profitable based on the time I'm putting into them. So I don't know if that's kind of what the blog post was about, really.
Yeah, that's great because for one, you're getting better experiencing that way and you're getting more profit, or you have a higher chance of making more profit. And so like us devs, like we want to make the best game possible. And sometimes we like delay our game trying to make it better and better before we release it. Like how do we just put our foot down? It's like, all right, this is enough and I'm going to release the game instead of keep trying to fix every single bug or just do something to keep improving the game. We should just put our foot down and release it. Like, how do we do that?
Well, that's tricky. There's a couple of things there. One of the techniques I use is I keep a separate list for like polish items. So anytime I think of something, I think, oh, that would be cool to add into the game. I put it on my polish list, not my to-do list. So the to-do list is stuff that I must do in order to find it, actually ship the game in it for it to be whole and functional. But the polish list is stuff that I feel very strongly about today because I've just thought of it. But in a week or so, I'll be going, oh, that really doesn't matter. I can do something else. So that was the sort of thing that helped me get games out the door. Even with Shadowhand, after 2.5 years, I probably would have spent another year on it, no problems at all. But I didn't. It needed to go out the door. And the other thing is, the things you think are important are not necessarily the things players and customers are going to think are important. And once you've got it out the door, they can actually give you feedback and tell you what they want to see in the game. And you can go back and add that and make everyone happy. And it's the right stuff rather than the wrong stuff. So that's one aspect. One other really important one is at the beginning, when you design your game, is making sure that the scope is achievable for your capabilities. So with Shadowhand, even with 12 years or 11 years at that point experience behind me, we made a game with too big a scope, and it took too long to make as a result. And so this can happen to anyone, right? You've got to make sure your game is. If you think it's going to take 6 months, it'll probably take 12 or more. So make sure your scope is small and achievable.
Oh, great tips. And I'm just curious how many games you're planning to release on 2018.
Well, definitely one. Probably I'm aiming for 2. And if the second one isn't out, it would be very, very close to being done. So, yeah, I'm making one short one, which is a sequel to a game I made before. And then probably a slightly longer one reusing an existing engine. But things may change. Things can always change in a year depending on what opportunities and collaborations crop up and so on.
Nice. All the best on your games as well.
Thanks.
So what mistakes are most common, even at a pro level, for any devs? Like when we try to run our business as a small team, like what do you see are mistakes that are most common?
Okay, well, I've sort of gone over it in a sense that making a game that's too big is very common, indeed. Sometimes what happens... Yeah, everybody, when they start out, tries to make too big a game pretty much. Even though there's many blog posts out there, people like me saying, don't do it, people still do it. And they might sink too much of their own, personal funding and stuff into that, expecting to make money. So that's another big mistake, expecting to make money from your game. Like your first game, your 10th game, doesn't matter. Like you hope to, and... but I did this talk at GDC called the No-Hit Wonder, and the point was, I'd shipped at that point 10, 11 games, and some of them had done better than others, but none of them were big hits, but they just made enough to keep me going. So if you can budget your time and the amount you spend on the game, that as long as it does sort of just okay, you'll be okay. That's more sensible than hoping for a big win. Yeah, so hoping for a big win and then basically not getting that can really obviously ruin a studio, and people have to quit and get jobs and whatever. So, yeah, smaller games and don't expect to make money, which is harsh. You've got to plan for success, but you need to have backup plans, and you need to be able to survive a flop. Basically, you need to be able to make several games that might flop in a row if you really want to survive long term.
Yeah, you brought up a great point that there's a lot of blogs to tell players or game devs to start small. Why do you think that they still start big though? Like, what's up with that? Because you are correct. I see a lot of blogs that just tell game devs, hey, start small. Don't think too big. Don't have a big goal, big scope. Like, why do you think game devs still do that though?
I'm not sure. Look, it could be people not properly researching, and so they haven't seen or heard this stuff. And obviously you should research any market you're about to start a business in. If you're opening a restaurant, you'd have to find out all about it, right? The pitfalls and so on. So it could be that lack of research. The other thing it could be is people think they're different. Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No.
It's this thing where if you ask people, are you a better than average driver? Like 80% say yes. Now, clearly that can't be true. Yeah, only 50% are, right? So there's this whole kind of thing where people always consistently rate themselves better than other people at something. And maybe there's this idea that I'll be different. I can make this big game, it'll be fine. Or, it's just simply a mistake. They actually tried to make a smaller game, but it got away from them because they weren't experienced about scope, or all the things you really need to do to make a game shippable, especially if you're one of those people who tries to do everything yourself instead of hiring in third parties for art, sound, music and stuff like that, marketing, so I don't know what the reasons are. We'd have to ask these people, I guess. How did you do that?
Well, hopefully they learn early and stuff later on that the scope is too big, or they should have thought of something smaller. But yeah, overall, give us your key principles for creating games, especially as an indie. Like, you've been indie now. Give us the key principles for creating great games and seeking success.
Okay, so I guess my biggest one, and this applies to life as well, is to analyze your results and be willing to improve. So for every game, I've looked at what went right, what went wrong, what could I have done differently, and I've tried to improve from each game moving forwards. Like, my first 2 games didn't make any money. They were basically flops. I felt they were okay as games, but they just didn't look very good. So I changed engine and worked with artists and musicians and stuff to sort of make them a lot more polished, and then suddenly I started to see better returns. And every game, I look at what other people are doing, what's good about their game, what's not good, what can I bring to mine, ideas and so on. So it's all really being open to change and improving your techniques and learning from your peers, asking questions, reading what's going on, staying up to date with the industry so you're not sort of left behind. So that's my key principle, really. Keep on improving.
Keep on. I love that principle. And now let's take this on a more personal level. You've been making games. You make that huge transition from your old job to indie dev. I'm just curious, what was the worst moment of your career? That one moment that's still vivid in your mind. Be very detailed and tell us that personal story.
Well, I've got 2. I'm going to tell you them just kind of briefly. But both of them are actually due to external circumstances, okay? So the first one was when I spent a couple of years working for Big Fish Games in Vancouver, Canada. And whilst I was working there, my father passed away, and I came back to the UK and I was with him and he passed away. And then basically I had to go back to working on this sort of free-to-play Facebook game. And I had to kind of sit there and code and do design and everything and work with my team like everything was normal. But basically, I was pretty wrecked from that whole situation. And it's very, very hard to work when you're suffering from a loss. So that's one example. Another example was when I was working on Spring Bonus, and I just finished it basically, and I just spent all night testing it, had about 1 hour sleep, and my wife came into my office and said she was really ill. I took her to hospital, and it turned out that actually she had a rare form of cancer, and I was supposed to be shipping the game that day after the casual portals, and I had to sort of delay that and make sure she was okay, But eventually, because of the Canadian healthcare system, she went through, they treated her and she's okay. But they were very tough times. And I guess they're both due to external circumstances. So they weren't even really due to things I was doing in my career. They were just stuff that cropped up that were very hard to deal with. And so the takeaway, I guess, from that is, life can interfere in ways that you're not expecting and can have a big impact. There's not really a solution for that except to make sure your work is flexible, and that you've got a good support network of friends and family. I guess that's it really. So I guess expect the unexpected.
Yeah, and sorry to hear that. Oh wow, I just can't imagine what you've gone through, especially, you're making a game. You went right back to work after, your father passed away. And so did the company give you did they give you some time off? Like, did they say, hey, I see, you're having a tough time. You should take some time off.
They did give me a bit of time off. I mean, I used some of my holiday that I built up, and they gave me a tiny bit of extra time. And I was very grateful for that. But the reality is, it depends on how well you get on with your parents. People have different relationships, but the reality is it takes years to sort of get over something like that, and you never really fully do. Mm-hmm. But for quite a long time, I was definitely down. Maybe some people get over these things quicker, and some don't. So it's just a tough thing, But ultimately, you've just got to get on with things, right?
if you don't mind me asking, like, how did you, push through those tough times? Cause I heard stories like this before where, something just personal, big personal thing happened, a tragic happened, and they're working on this game that they're passionate about. Like, what did you, in particular, if you don't mind me asking, push through those moments?
Let me see. Well, the thing is, there's always the need to provide, because I do have a wife and 2 kids, right? And we had the bills and the house and everything else. So there's always this notion that I need to provide for them, and I can't really drop the ball in that sense. So that's kind of like a sort of pressure that doesn't really let up. So in a way, I just had to turn up to work and do the job and get the thing done. And the same when I did Spring Bonus, get it out the door and making money from it. But actually, with Spring Bonus, when my wife got ill, I did have a friend step in who helped me out in Vancouver. So he offered me some work because we needed some money there. And that was really good as well. So sometimes other people help you out, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's one solution, just the need to keep going, really.
Yeah, keep going. And yeah, that's great that you have a great support system. So that's awesome right there. All right. Yeah. In your profession, like, what are bad recommendations do you hear that we should be avoiding?
One of them is a bit classic, is make something that you're passionate about, make a game that you'll love. Now, along with people saying just make a great game and it will sell itself sort of thing. So the problem I've got with this is if it's a hobby, yeah, absolutely, I agree. It's not a problem. But when it's your job, you have to also make something that's going to sell, right? And that doesn't mean you have to make something you hate, absolutely not. But you've got to find something you're passionate about that also has a chance in the market, yeah? You've got to find that crossover. So all the games I've made, I've enjoyed making, and I've found that there's a viable market for them. Whereas if I just went and make something absolutely crazy that I'm passionate about with no market, I'd soon go out of business, right? So I feel that you've got to be careful with that advice about just make a great game, because it's like, well, if nobody else wants to play it, it doesn't matter, and if you don't do any marketing, it's not going to succeed either. So, yeah.
Exactly. You got to do that research ahead of time just to be safe. Like, you got to do that research. And when you do your research, to see if there's a viable market, what exactly do you do?
Well, when I made casual games for quite a long time, these are downloadable games, by the way, for PC, Mac. You get off sites like Big Fish Games and Gamehouse and so on. So they're always within certain specific genres and follow certain conventions. So what I did is I just studied all the top games. I played them. I figured out what was common about them, what made them the best ones stand out. I made lists of all these kind of features and the best games and so on. And then I tried to emulate what they were doing, but in my own way. And, I succeeded at that eventually, but it took several tries. Now, with something like indie, it's a much bigger market. You've got indie games on Steam. There's a huge variety out there, but you can still research which are the ones that seem to be selling and figure out why they're selling and why they're better than other ones. It's not always about the game, remember. It can be about marketing and so on. As well, and community and streamers and whether things go viral. So there's so many different factors. There's definitely no magic bullet, but you've got to do your best, I think, to not make something totally obscure that no one's going to play. That is if you're in this as a business, and that's what I am.
Nice. So what are the biggest waste of time do you see happening?
Well, for me, one big waste of time was doing mobile ports of my games. I mean, I knew the desktop space well. I tried out mobile and they made some money, but not enough. And that's why when people keep saying, why haven't you ported your recent games to mobile? It's like an opportunity cost. I could spend the time doing that with uncertain returns, or just make another PC game, which I know will, hopefully do better. So other things, God, I wasted time. I'm bad at wasting time on details that people won't notice. I mean, I already talked about this polish list that helps stopping me doing that, but I do it. I still do it a lot on lots of things, fiddling with tiny details that, people aren't going to really notice. Another thing is doing things that you're not good at instead of hiring a professional. So, if you're not an artist, why are you messing around with art? Hire one. If you're not a musician, hire one. If you're not good at marketing, hire one. So, that's an opportunity cost. You could spend hundreds of hours doing something badly, and there's a real cost to you there, instead of hiring somebody else. So, That's something else I think you can waste time on. And another one is chasing every opportunity that comes your way. Like, I get a lot of offers for this, that, and the other, and it's quite tempting to say yes to them all, but many of them are just a waste of time, and it's best to focus on your strengths and what your core business aims are, and go for those, really. So that it's all about focus. In fact, part of this came when my father passed away. I'm a parent and so on, and I realized, gosh, maybe I'm halfway through my life. Who knows? Maybe less. I don't even know. But, I realized that you've got to aim for the important things in life, and that might be family or things you really enjoy. And then within work, it's just focusing on the best, most fun, and the most money-making opportunities, and trying to sort of just combine those. Like, why watch a crappy show on Netflix when you can find the best one, because you don't know how long you've got, and you've got to make the best of what you've got whilst you're here, really, and avoid wasting time. So that's been a big focus of mine kind of ever since then.
Yeah, that's funny because 2017, one of my goals was to use my time wisely. Cause like I was spending too much time on Netflix, on YouTube, on just wasting time. And that's why I started this podcast. Like once I started to do something more productive, I was able to achieve a lot of stuff. And cool. One of the things that you mentioned, which I did, was hire someone for my weakness. Like, I was terrible at art. I'm terrible at programming, so I hired someone to help me make my mobile game. And I got a release next October. So I definitely love that advice of hiring someone for your weakness, because you don't want to waste time. You want to double down on your strength. That's the thing. You want to double down on your strength and let someone else take care of your weakness for you.
Yeah, big time. I totally agree with that. And it's hard to give up that sometimes when you're used to running your own business. It's hard to sometimes let somebody else do that, but it's pretty important, really.
Yeah, it just saves you so much time. And yeah, you just never know. You just save us too much time. What have you changed your mind about in the last few years, and why in terms of the game industry?
Yeah, basically, well, you decided to do that in 2017, and that's what I'm deciding to do this year. It's basically making more optimized decisions and not wasting time. I mean, not only just sort of wasting time on Twitter or whatever, but within my business, making more optimized decisions and not wasting time, and within the games that I'm making. So everything needs to just be sped up a bit and done in a more optimized manner. And I'm trying to sort of get good at making optimized decisions and the right decisions. And that's a whole kind of skill in itself that I'm probably pretty good at some of that already, or I know what the decisions are, but sometimes I ignore them, and it's like I just need to do the right thing now more often and in a better way. And I think that is a key thing in being successful in business, right? Mm-hmm. And I told you already about personally only doing like the best possible things. Like, this is, if I go somewhere with my wife and I want to have a hotel, I'm not going to try and save money and get the crappiest hotel. I try to find a nice hotel. We have a nice time, If we go out for a nice meal, it's fairly rare because we've got kids and stuff. So we have a nice meal. We get what we want, just stuff like that, really. If I'm going to play a video game, I'm going to play a really, really good one that I want to play. I'm not going to waste my time on things. I used to have a terrible problem when I was younger too. Every game I bought, I would try to complete. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And every book I bought, I try to finish, even if it wasn't good. And I just don't do that now. I just go, I've learned everything I can from this game. I'm moving on now.
Exactly. Yeah. When I play a bad game now, I'm just like, all right, I'm done. I'm moving on.
Yeah. Good for you. It took me a long time to realize that.
Oh no, it took me a while too. It's hard to do. That's the thing. It's really hard to change that habit. What are you trying something out new for 2018? Well,
mostly this whole idea about making shorter games, really, just because I've done that in the past and it worked. Then I made longer games and it didn't work so well. So yeah, just going back to shorter games and reusing my engine and stuff. So this year, I don't know if this year is going to be particularly innovative, but it's going to be a sort of consolidation year where I hopefully make some good games, get some money in the bank that give me a few more options about what to do next. Oh, I guess, okay, one thing I'm planning on doing is collaborating with another indie I know. So they're going to handle part of the project and I'm going to handle the other part. Now, I've worked with my wife on 2 games, Regency Solitaire and Shadowhand, but this is working with someone else. And they're not just in a sort of funding capacity or whatever. We're properly working on something together. So that's the whole 2 heads are better than one thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to trying that out. And if that goes well, I'll do it again.
Nice. I'm cheering you on, Jake. I'm looking for. I hope you get 2 games out there.
yeah. Thanks.
So now you have a lot of experience, much more better now. What do you think was like the best investment you've ever made? It could be investment of money, time, or energy. What was that investment?
Well, actually, I mentioned it in my blog. So that was making Spooky Bonus, which was my 7th Match 3 game. So I'd made, a bunch before, and they were getting better and better. I did a spring-themed one, and it did okay, and people liked it. And I just realized that the market wanted darker-themed games. And I thought, I lived in Vancouver at the time, and Halloween is big in Canada and I guess in the States, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not so big in the UK, and I hadn't realized how big it was till I was over there. And I thought, gosh, if I make a Halloween game, I reckon it will hit the sort of dark theme, but I can make it kind of fun as well, and it will hopefully do okay. And it did. It took me 3 months to make. But this is still using an existing engine, so it was like a reskin, plus I had to put in a whole load of new mechanics and stuff to make it different. I do that with all my games. And it just, in the end, it earned me nearly $400 an hour, which is pretty good. But that's taken 5 years for that money to come in. But it was clear at the beginning it did pretty well. Now, if it had taken me 2 years, that would be $50 an hour, right? So it was still pretty good. But that's the best investment I ever made in terms of time.
So you created a theme based on the trend that was going on, correct?
Yeah. Oh well, just the fact that I'd spotted that Halloween was so big in North America, and that's where most of my customers are anyway. So yeah.
Boom! That's that research right there. Oh, yeah, it was. What was the greatest idea you had to date, like an aha moment?
Probably adding turn-based solitaire combat to Shadowhand. So that literally was an aha moment I had in the bar sometime. I was like, I've got to try and get this idea we had of a highway woman in a solitaire game, but I want to make it better, more suitable for Steam, so it's not a casual game. What could I do? And I suddenly sort of visualized how you could play the computer AI at a game of solitaire and charge up your weapons and attack each other. And I played the game through in my head and thought, I think this could work. I prototyped it. It did work. And then that became a core component of Shadowhand.
Wow. It was funny. I read research that taking a bath actually makes you, or can make you more creative or think of creative ideas.
Yeah, well, it raises your heartbeat. I don't know if more blood goes around the brain or something, and you're also not sitting in front of your computer sort of trying to come up with ideas. It's like people come up with ideas in the shower or going for a walk or whatever, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, yes. More bath, more walks.
Yeah.
With the game industry booming, what are you most excited about today?
There's a lot going on all over the place. To be honest, I'm most excited about making and shipping my next game. And honestly, that's just the most exciting thing to me, is making another game, getting out of the door, see how it goes. Yeah, I think that's it, really. I don't see any particular trend that I'm chasing or that I'm excited about. Well, I'm excited about the Dark Souls remaster for PS4. I'm excited about that. But yeah, mostly it's just running my own business and excited to keep going.
Do you see the game industry changing in any ways in the future, in terms of maybe the mobile, or maybe the Sony will do a handheld version of the Switch or something?
Well, perhaps. I mean, I'm not really an expert on that sort of thing, but I do know about the change that's happened in indie games. So, for example, Steam used to be a closed system, and if your game got on there in 2013 or whatever, they would put it on the front page and you could make a huge amount of money. And then, they added Greenlight, and then more and more games got through, and then they got rid of that and put Steam Direct, where you pay $100 fee to get on. And now there's a huge amount of games on there. And I think it is hard to stand out, so you really do have to market your game off of Steam a lot and try to get press and streamers covering it. I mean, you've always sort of had to do your own marketing anyway, but it's even more important now than ever, and it's harder to stand out. And to be honest, I see that getting worse, not better. More and more people are making games, which is cool. Okay, good for them, but it does affect, if you're trying to run a business and have a commercial venture, it does make it harder. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people are gonna try and fail, or a lot of people who've already succeeded for a while are going to fail. Maybe that could be me. I'm hoping to keep going, though, so the fact I've made several games already and I've got some influence might help me there, but it's never a guarantee.
So do you think they're taking that in the right direction of opening the floodgates for more people to come in? Because people say, about the mobile market that's oversaturated. So you think Steam is taking it in the right direction?
I don't personally know, but I mean, this is from a selfish point of view that I'm making games. It's my job. I want to have a platform where it's curated with quality games that customers know what they're getting. And as a developer, I stand a greater chance of getting my game in front of them and it being successful. That's just me being selfish, right? If I was a hobbyist gamer, I'd be like, yeah, I can get my game on Steam. Awesome. So if I was wearing that hat. But then I say there's other sites for them. There's like itch.io, and they've just, hey, this doing what people used to do, which is put your game up on your own website. That's what I've got all my games on my own website that I'm selling direct. So I do think it's going in the wrong direction for developers and customers. They must have their own reasons, and I think that happened with mobile, and it's proven very difficult to make money on mobile as an indie. I don't know, how did you find it?
Yeah, I think, of course, I'm with people. Like, it's great that people are making more games and more games, but I do like there to be like a criteria, I guess, of the certain type of games that could be on certain type of platform. Like Steam should have a certain type of game, then itch.io is a certain type of games. But I think there should be a criteria so people go to like just to specific platforms. But I do like the fact that a lot more people was able to put their game and just put it out there to the world, though.
I mean, that's cool, and I don't disagree with that. And I think that's going to happen more and more. It just makes it harder for people trying to run a business, right? But maybe that's the reality of it. It's like anyone can make music and put it online now, or record a video, or write a book and sell it for Amazon. And I think it's just going that way with games. And it's changing, so.
Yeah, everybody just have to step up their game even further now. Like with marketing, with social media posting, with communication with the audience. Yeah, everybody has to just step up the game even further.
Yep.
What is that one game that influenced you the most, and why?
Well, probably Bejeweled, right? Just because I played it in 2005, I think, and I thought, hey, I could make something like that. And then I did. I made a Christmas themed version of it. And then, I made a whole bunch, and that started my career in casual games. So it's influential in the sense that, it's really influenced my career. There's loads of other games I've loved playing, of course, that have influenced me in different ways, but that's the one that's I can think of. I mean, more recently, things like Dark Souls has influenced my way of thinking about things a bit, and some of those elements made it into Shadowhand. So, I play a lot of RPGs and stuff, and I like the way they do their systems and things, and I look at those carefully, how people design things. And I like stuff like Blizzard games, like how they do their polish, like Overwatch and stuff, or I've forgotten their Hearthstone, the polish they put into their games. All that stuff influences me as well.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of fan that Blizzard has with their games. Overwatch, Hearthstone, World of Warcraft, it's insane.
They're very good games. They spend a lot of time throwing stuff away, I think, and a lot of time perfecting things, which they can kind of afford to because they're a big company with a big following, So.
Well, what type of game do you like? What's like the ultimate game that you want to create? Or just that one game that you really want to make one day?
It's funny, when people are asked that, they often come up with some giant, massive game or whatever, but I don't even want to do that. I was just talking to someone on Twitter a minute ago about this. When I was a kid, I used to make retro games because, retro was new back then. So, I used to like making little platformer games, shoot 'em ups, gauntlet style games. And actually, I would like to be able to make those sort of games, retro style games, put them on Steam and make money from them. The problem is I don't think it's viable, but that's ultimately what I'd want to do, is just a whole series of small, fun little games. There's no giant pressure. They haven't got loads of fancy graphics. I haven't spent years making them. Just going back to my sort of hobby, because I'm running a business, but as a hobby, that's what I enjoyed, trying all sorts of different stuff out. So I don't even have really one type of game that's a dream game. It's more like the type of game I want to make. I just don't think it's financially viable, unfortunately. It might be, but I can't afford to try.
I like that because you don't want to. I guess if you take on a huge game, you might overwhelm yourself, and then in the end, it might make a lot of money because it's much more riskier. So you can stick to your strength and make indie games and stuff like that. So that's awesome right there. Why do you love being a part of the video game industry?
Well, I've always liked making games as a hobby. So doing it as a job is pretty cool. As I said, it's not quite the same because you have to make different decisions and there's different pressures than when you're doing it as a hobby. But I still love doing it, and I've got a very flexible lifestyle. You know, I'm my own boss. I work at home, choose my own hours. I can go out to lunch with my wife or whatever, or not work if I want to, or work a weekend if I want to. So, you know, and I like seeing people enjoy my games. That's pretty cool as well, and getting their feedback and that sort of thing. And also, there's great people in this industry. You know, I like meeting them. I like talking to them online on Twitter and stuff, but it's lovely to actually meet them in person. I went to an event in London 2 weeks ago. That was really good. And I'm going to GDC, the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco in March. And I go to that pretty much every year for nearly a decade. And it's really good to see people discuss the ins and outs of the industry or specifics about a game, and just meeting other people who understand what you're doing is really, really great. I've met a lot of good friends through the industry.
Everybody tells me to go GDC, so I got to go one day. I got to go. You know, you make that big jump from a full-time job to indie. Like, what do you want to tell people that's, you know, just on the verge of doing something like similar? Like, they want to just start making games and put it out there, and then, you know, but they have a safe job on the sideline. But of course, a safe job is like taking up the 9 to 5. It's taking up time. So what do you want to advise them, those people where they're just on the verge of just going full indie?
Well, I mean, I was on that point, obviously, myself. And, you know, I had 2 kids at the time. One was a baby, one was a toddler, a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. You know, so it was not a sensible move when I did it. And I didn't do that move. I didn't have any real savings either. I was just sort of confident in my abilities that I could make money and survive. That was actually wrong, that confidence, because I didn't make any money for 18 months. Right?
Oh, whoa.
It's because my first 2 games flopped. I didn't make any money until I got a contract job with Big Fish Games. And that brought in some money that helped me pay off my debts that I built up by that point, right? So I did not go into this insensibly. The only thing was I had this like determination, this will to succeed and provide for my family. And so eventually it's kind of worked out, though it's been rough. But yeah, so going back to it is if you want to go full time, you should absolutely have made a whole bunch of free games first yourself, like finished games that you've put out on the internet. You've got feedback from as to whether they're good and whether you enjoy the whole process. You probably should have even tried to make a small commercial game as a hobby and see how that goes, right? So you're realistic about what sort of money you can get. And you should have saved up a whole load of money, like for a year or more, to make sure that you can finish your project without going broke, and that you've got a plan B if it doesn't succeed like you hope, because most games don't do that well. That's the reality of it. So it's a very risky thing, and you should only jump into it if you're prepared to take that risk and you know what the consequences are, and that you build up a safety net. So I guess those are the sort of things I'd advise.
Oh, Jake, I did not know those earlier. You already had 2 kids and you didn't have no save. Wow, that's a huge jump you did.
It was tough, man. I went from some good money per month making business software to like nothing, basically.
Whew, yeah, so definitely take his advice in game devs. Don't jump too soon. Just make sure you have some kind of backup plan or something to keep you going if things don't go or work out. Awesome. Before we go into the lightning round game devs, don't forget that my website, gamedevloadout.com, will have all the show notes for you to use. Just type in the number 87 in the search bar to find Jake's episode for all the resources that we just talked about. And now, Jake, are you ready to crush the lightning round?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. What was holding you back from joining the game industry?
Well, just the fact that I had a job and kids and everything. So it was a big risk to take, and I knew it was. So I guess that was what was holding me back. What's
a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Mostly that I stick at things and I finish them. Okay, so I'm not always efficient. I've already talked about that, how I'd like to be more efficient. I'm not even always hard working, right? But I do finish things and I ship them. So another thing is I've been doing Aikido for 20 years now. I'm a 3rd Dan black belt in it. So you only get a black belt in a martial art if you stick at it for a long time and you turn up every week and you keep doing it. And like I've stuck at playing the guitar for 25 years. So honestly, to do anything decent in life, you have to stick at it.
Stick in. I like that because I'm doing MMA right now, and I'm gonna do jiu-jitsu. So I'm looking to earn that belt as well. So yeah, stay persistent, stick at it. Yeah. Definitely. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, this is a hard question because I've probably got loads of good advice over the years from many, many people. But I can recall one piece of advice that got me to go indie in the first place. So there's a guy called Steve Pavlina, and he's kind of like a self-help guru guy now, but he used to make computer games back in the day and ran a forum. And he made a blog post called Cultivate Burning Desire, right? Which sounds cheesy, and it is, but it was good. I read it, and it was just about really really getting inspired and really want to do the thing that you want to do. And I read this stuff, and I knew I wanted to go indie, and it drove me to sort of quit everything and do this. Perhaps unwisely, but it was good.
What was in the book, or what did he say?
I think it's still out there, so people can Google it. If they Google Cultivate Burning Desire, they can read it. I can't even remember the specific advice, but I think it was all just along the lines of if you want to succeed about something, you have to really visualize it and really get into the space and everything else, I guess. I'm sorry it's a bit vague, but have a look at the article and see what you think.
If you see it, then you believe it, or something like that. I forgot.
Yeah.
Because
stuff like that, really.
Yeah. You got to visualize it, because otherwise it's just going to be harder to reach that goal. How has a failure set you up for a later success?
Well, when my first games didn't do very well, I realized I needed to boost the quality. Yeah. So I changed engine, because my first games used DirectX 1, so they had software rendering. So I changed engine to one that could use DirectX 7 and could do 3D stuff, and not even 3D, but just like scaling, rotation, and particle effects and stuff. And then I worked with a professional artist and musician and so on. So the quality bar rose, and that's when I started to make money. So my failure was my first two games that were poorer quality.
What's a great marketing tip to make yourself and your game stand out?
Okay, so you need to think about how to market your game from the beginning before you even start. So that includes the name, okay? The name is really, really important. The genre of game and your market research and all that kind of stuff. What makes it different as well? What makes it stand out? You've got to come up with a hook, something cool. And even your story as a developer, everybody's got a different story. One of the things with Regency Solitaire was that it was me and my wife, a husband and wife team, making the game. That's fairly unusual. And it was a historical English game, sort of romantic solitaire game with a story. No one had sort of done that before. So these are all things that helped it stand out. And Regency Solitaire, the name says what it is, right? So all of these things help to market the game.
Oh, I was about to ask you that. In terms of the game name, what are other ways to come up with a great name?
Well, it either has to be unusual, so no one's heard of it before, or a name that says what it does. So a friend of mine, Cliff Harris, he made Gratuitous Space Battles, and when you hear that, you sort of get an idea as to what it might be. And now he's, and now he's making a game called Production Line about running a car factory. So some game names can say what they are, and you already get a good idea. What about Crypt of the Necro Dancer? So that's a game by another friend of mine, Ryan. And it's a rhythm-based roguelike game. And you sort of get that. I know it's hard to come up with unique names because you've got to search them on the internet and see if someone's used them for something else, like a chocolate bar or whatever. And that you can get the Twitter and Facebook accounts and the .com domain and all that kind of stuff. You should take quite a long time naming your game. If it's too long as well, it won't look very good on small image captions on Steam as well. And if it's spelled weirdly, people won't be able to Google for it and they won't remember how to spell it. So you have to think about all those things.
Wow, yeah, so much to it. So much to it. What resources should we use to get started today?
Well, there's tons, isn't there, really? Like Twitter is good just because you can make friends with people, you can ask questions and people will help you out. And it's good to get your stuff out there a little bit, but you've got to spend time on there building your profile up. There are also game developer forums related to your language. So I used the Blitz Basic forums for years, and they were really good and got loads of advice. So if you use Unity, there are Unity forums and stuff like that. There may be local game dev groups in your area. Like I co-founded Full Indie in Vancouver, and that was great for meeting other indies. Plus, of course, conferences like I've already mentioned. There's even YouTube tutorials out there. You can search Google for codes. There's just so many resources. There's blogs of experienced developers. Cliffsky's blog is good. I blog about things. There's many ways, but I guess the main thing is just get started, right? Get an engine, start to try and make a game. Make sure it's small and achievable, and just see how you get on.
Yeah, you heard on Game Devs, get started. Now, Jake, this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world, and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of, and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to join and become successful in the game industry?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I had the money and resources. That's good. Because that's the bit everyone struggles with, right? Well, I would definitely get on Twitter. I would start making a game. I'd start making a small game. And then I would start putting pictures of it out there, and GIFs and videos, and talk about the game nice and early just to build interest. Perhaps I'd try out early access on Steam as well. But I'd obviously have tried to come up with a concept that had a good name and was easy, that marketed itself. Like if you can make a game that streamers want to play already and that's going to be good for streaming and, so it can go viral in itself, that's obviously a good thing to do as well. I don't know. I guess I would just try and do everything I'm doing now.
Yeah, I like that. We have reached the end. Go ahead and give us one last parting piece of guidance in how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Last piece of guidance is making commercial games is hard. Okay, so try it as a hobby first. Make a finished game. Keep them small. And if you like doing that, then only go full time when you've got a safety net. So I kind of said that before, but that's super important. So yeah, people can connect with me. I'm on Twitter as Grey Alien. That's Grey with an E. And I've got a Facebook page, Grey Alien Games, and a website, greyaliengames.com. So I'm around. I'll be at GDC. So if you see me there, say hi. And that's it really.
Awesome, Jake. It's been a pleasure. So definitely check out his stuff, Game Devs. I will post everything up on the website, and holler at him if you see him at GDC. So Jake, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. For that, we are truly grateful, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, Tony. Awesome.
Thank you, Game Devs, for listening. I hope we brought you value today. Equip yourself with the best loadout and take action. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast with iTunes or Castbox to listen to more inspiring stories and gain valuable knowledge. I greatly appreciate it if you share the show with your fellow peers so that they can also be motivated. Until then, I'm your host, Tony Chan, and I'll catch you next Wednesday on the Game Dev Loadout podcast. Peace.